This analysis delves into the recent and significant shifts in Donald Trump's approval ratings following his unprecedented return to the White House for a non-consecutive second term in November. This victory was a historical anomaly, marking Trump as the first U.S. president since 1892 to achieve such a feat and the first Republican ever to do so. Initially, despite a well-documented history of controversies that spanned off for decades, Trump commenced his second term with a surprisingly robust level of public support. His net approval rating at the beginning of this term actually surpassed that of his first term, suggesting a potentially stronger foundation of support. However, the political landscape is ever evolving, and within the initial 3 months of his second presidency, a noticeable trend has emerged. Multiple recent polls and surveys indicate a rapid decline in Donald Trump's support base. This erosion is so significant that current polling numbers now place him at a lower popularity level than he experienced even during his first term in office. This raises critical questions about the factors contributing to this swift downturn in public sentiment. In this comprehensive analysis, we will dissect the latest survey data to gain a clear understanding of the current state of public opinion regarding President Trump. We will pay particular attention to his polling numbers concerning the economy, as this is often a key indicator of presidential approval. Furthermore, we will endeavor to explain the underlying reasons why this iteration of Trump's presidency appears to be even more unpopular than his first stint in the White House. To ensure you never miss an episode of our in-depth political analysis and remain fully informed about the evolving political landscape, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel and activate notifications by ringing the bell. Now let's move directly into the crucial data that illuminates this shift in public opinion. Upon assuming office for his second term, Donald Trump's approval numbers presented a seemingly positive picture. He held a net positive approval rating, meaning that a larger percentage of Americans approved of his performance than disapproved. Notably, these initial figures indicated a higher level of popularity compared to the commencement of his first term. While presidential approval ratings often experience a gradual decrease in the initial months following the honeymoon period, the decline observed at this stage was not initially alarming or outside historical norms. However, the situation has taken a dramatic turn. In the past few days, a series of newly published polls have revealed a significant and concerning plummet in President Trump's approval ratings. To illustrate this, the most recent survey conducted by YouGov demonstrated that while 41% of Americans currently approve of Trump's presidency, a clear majority of 54% now express disapproval. This results in a net approval rating of -13, with particularly unfavorable numbers among younger voters, a demographic often crucial for long-term political support. Adding to this concerning trend, a poll released by the Pew Research Center on Wednesday presented even more unfavorable data for the president, indicating a net approval rating of -19. Even traditionally more favorable outlets, such as Fox News, have recorded a significant decline. Their most recent poll places Trump at a net approval rating of -11, a substantial drop of 9 points compared to the previous month. This marks the worst polling performance for any president at this equivalent point in their term, signaling a potentially deep-seated shift in public sentiment. The situation for President Trump becomes even more precarious when specifically examining public opinion on his handling of the economy. Starkly contrasting with his first term, Trump 2.0 is polling significantly worse on economic issues. His net economic approval rating has now reached its lowest point ever recorded. An Economist YouGov poll released earlier this week further underscores this point, revealing that Trump's net approval on the economy has fallen to -12. This represents a staggering 24-point collapse since January and places his economic approval well below the lowest levels observed during his first term, indicating a significant loss of confidence in his economic policies. Furthermore, a majority of Americans, 52%, now believe that the U.S. economy is deteriorating under President Trump's second term. This figure has dramatically increased from 37% immediately following his inauguration, highlighting a rapid shift towards economic pessimism. Interestingly, the percentage of those who believe the economy is improving has also seen a modest increase, rising from 19% in late January to 25% in mid-April. This simultaneous rise in both negative and positive outlooks could be symptomatic of the increasingly polarized nature of the American electorate. As highlighted by FT data journalist John Byrne Murdoch, the American public is exhibiting increasing partisan division regarding their perception of the economy. Republican voters tend to view the economy favorably when their party is in power, and conversely, Democrats often hold a more positive view when their party controls the White House. This contrasts with many Western European nations, where a greater consensus on economic performance often exists across party lines. Despite this partisan divide, overall consumer confidence in the U.S. economy is currently lower than at any point during Donald Trump's first term. Notably, even Republicans are displaying less optimism about the economic outlook under Trump compared to any point during his first term, with the exception of the period immediately following his election loss in December 2020. This decline in economic confidence can be largely attributed to President Trump's policy decisions during his second term. Specifically, his implementation of global tariffs and sweeping cuts to federal spending have proven to be far more disruptive to the economy than many initially anticipated. For instance, despite President Trump's campaign rhetoric emphasizing concerns about inflation and rising egg prices, his implemented tariffs are likely to exacerbate price increases in the short term, assuming they remain in effect. Moreover, these inflationary risks could be further amplified if President Trump exerts pressure on the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. Simultaneously, President Trump's tariffs and the resulting damage to business and consumer confidence have prompted the International Monetary Fund, IMF, to issue a concerning forecast for the U.S.'s economy. In their recent report, the IMF predicts a significant slowdown in economic growth, assigning a 40% probability of a recession and downgrading their growth forecast from 2.7% to 1.8%. This represents the most substantial downgrade for any advanced economy, signaling significant international concern regarding the direction of the U.S. economy under President Trump's policies. The uncertainty surrounding President Trump's tariffs has also had a negative impact on the stock market. The S&P 500 has experienced a decline of approximately 10% from its peak in January, reflecting investor apprehension regarding the potential economic consequences of these trade policies. Unsurprisingly, this potential combination of sluggish economic growth and elevated inflation is proving unpopular with voters, further contributing to the decline in President Trump's overall approval ratings. Polls indicate that a larger proportion of Americans, 48%, believe that President Trump's tariffs are overall detrimental to the U.S.'s economy, compared to the 38% who perceive them as generally helpful. This suggests a significant lack of public support for a key element of his economic agenda. Once again, the stark partisan divide in public opinion is astounding. A significant 86% of Democrats believe that President Trump's tariffs will harm the U.S.'s economy in the long term, compared to a mere 14% of Republicans who share this view. Conversely, a substantial 74% of Republicans believe that tariffs will benefit the economy, while only 9% of Democrats agree. This extreme polarization highlights the difficulty in achieving any semblance of national consensus on economic policy under the current political climate. This deep partisan divide is reflected in President Trump's net approval ratings on specific key issues. According to data journalists G. Elliott Morris and Adam Carlson, his net approval ratings on trade and inflation have fallen to -15 and -18 respectively, indicating significant public disapproval in these crucial areas. Notably, immigration had seemingly been the sole area where President Trump maintained a net positive approval rating at +5. Recognizing the potential political vulnerability of President Trump on economic issues, Democrats such as Gavin Newsom have recently cautioned against focusing too heavily on immigration and specific related cases. Their strategic thinking suggests that emphasizing the negative impacts of President Trump's economic policies could be a more politically effective approach in swaying public opinion. However, the most recent polling data from earlier this week indicates a further deterioration in President Trump's approval ratings, even in the area of immigration, which had previously been a relative strength. A Reuters/Ipsos poll published on Tuesday revealed that President Trump now has a net negative approval rating of -1 regarding his handling of immigration. A YouGov poll published around the same time placed this figure even lower at -5, representing a significant 10-point drop in just a single week. This decline in approval on immigration is somewhat unsurprising when considering historical trends. While voters generally express positive sentiment towards President Trump's broad immigration policies, they consistently showed less support for specific, more hardline measures. Polling data from late March, for instance, revealed that only 26% of voters supported the controversial policy of deporting immigrants to El Salvadorian jails without due process, compared to a substantial 61% who opposed it. This mirrors a pattern observed during President Trump's first term, where his hardline stance on immigration faced electoral backlash once media attention focused on specific policies, such as family separation, which were widely. Perhaps a potential silver lining for President Trump in this otherwise concerning polling data is the fact that, at present, Democrats still hold a lower overall popularity than Republicans. Congressional Democrats are currently facing a net favorability rating of -23, indicating their own challenges in gaining widespread public support. Nonetheless, the overall trajectory of President Trump's approval ratings is clearly unfavorable. His campaign will undoubtedly hope for a significant turnaround in public sentiment before the crucial 2026 midterm elections. The situation is complex, with this story being reported by a wide range of news outlets. Interestingly, an analysis of the reporting on this issue reveals the influence of media bias. Approximately 29% of the reporting on President Trump's declining poll numbers originated from left-leaning news outlets, while 31% came from outlets with a right-leaning bias. Examining the headlines further illustrates this point. Left-leaning outlets tend to employ more dramatic language, such as Trump bleeding support and Americans sour on Trump, to describe the decline. In contrast, right-leaning outlets often use softer terminology, such as Trump's popularity slumps, Trump is losing ground, and Americans not loving Trump's economic agenda. Thank you for watching.